One of the toughest decisions a person can make is answering the call of God. If you're searching for answers and looking for advice, join us for Pathway to the Pulpit, hosted by Pastor Claude Cheatham, as he shares stories and life advice for those trying to become the person that God has called them to be. With numerous guests and tons of content to be shared, there's plenty of information to be learned. Join now and be a part of what God is trying to do in this season.
Grace and peace, love and joy from my Father. I'm Pastor Claude Cheatham, host for Pathways to the Pulpit. Man, this is a time of discovery and dialogue with our young preachers. Man, I'm so excited to be a young preacher, a millennial voice that gets to speak into our generation. It's so necessary and needed. It's really necessary because our generation needs voices that pour into each other. Man, we cannot go anywhere without each other, and we need each other to impact each other. And that's what Pathway to the Pulpit is. It's a time of discovery and dialogue to where young preachers will hear the wisdom of seasoned senior pastors that have traveled this path, that will be able to dig back on years of old and share their wisdom, share their experiences in their first church, share their wisdom throughout seminary, share their wisdom on how they manage life, how they manage their marriage, how they manage their personhood. This is really a time of discovery for our young preachers. How to manage sermon development. All of these things we will cover. Womanist theology. We will have times to where we will share with young preachers things that young preachers may not have heard. Pulpit decorum. All of these things we will share in Pathway to the Pulpit. And all we're missing is you. You got to join us. You don't want to miss these times of discovery and dialogue. The only thing that's missing is you. Look forward to having you. What's up, everybody? It is good to have you back again this week. We're excited as we're growing together in faith, growing together as a family. I'm delighted today as we've been sharing on pastoring and the different concepts, different aspects of the pastoral ministry. Last week, we talked a little bit in depth about that. We shared on those of which that will start churches from a peer perspective, those that will start churches that from a senior pastor perspective. But this week, I'm excited because we will be sharing on those that will function in the staff capacity, those that will function as executive pastor or associate pastor. One of the things I've discovered that as young ministers that we have to understand that each of us may not become senior pastors, and that's okay. That there are different avenues that God will give you and grace you to share your gift and become everything that he wants you to become through staff pastoring, or what some may call leading from the second chair. And I'm delighted, I'm encouraged, I'm excited ever the more because I get the opportunity to share with one of my big brothers, man, incredible preacher who is doing a magnificent, marvelous job there in Houston, Texas. He is a graduate of Virginia Union University, two-time graduate of Virginia Union University, Dr. Akeem Walker, who is the executive pastor at the Luke Church in Houston, Texas. Man, I'm excited to have him. Man, let's welcome Pastor Akeem, Dr. Akeem Walker. Man, it's a delight to have you, bro.
Man, thank you for having me, bro. I appreciate you sharing your space, and I get to hang out with my brother for a few.
Man, you somebody to know, man. I'm excited about what God is doing in your life, and really, man, how God gets the chance to allow you to put your imprint on the body of Christ, leading second leader. Man, before we get into the topic of leading from the second chair, man, share a little bit about your call journey, man. Tell us about how God positioned you for this work.
Wow. So I pastored a church for 10 years. I went there at 27. My first semester, of graduate school at Virginia Union. I remember I left class on a Saturday morning, intro to preaching, to go interview for the church that I was able to pastor for 10 years. When I first went to the church, they were two Sunday church.
Wow.
A year later, I met Pastor Jerome Barber. We preached together. If you're familiar with state convention, they put up a young preacher first as the inspirational preacher, and then the main preacher. And I was the inspirational preacher that night. Pastor Barber was the main preacher. And God knitted our hearts together. That night, I worked for him for 10 years. And then maybe 3 years ago now, I was able to work as an associate pastor at the Grove Church in Portsmouth. So I pastored and then served two pastors at the same time.
Wow.
And 45 days ago now, I moved from Virginia to Houston, Texas to serve with Pastor Timothy Sloan and the people at the Luke Church as the executive pastor. Didn't know him, didn't know the church, but because of mutual friends and colleagues, he was looking for someone. They knew I was in transition, and the Lord did the rest, and the rest is history.
Wow, man. You sounds like, God has really groomed you for this second chair leadership slot, serving at the Grove and serving with Pastor Barber. Man, what is your view of a second chair leader? And specifically, what capacity did that build in you?
It's hard. Because oftentimes the second chair or the staff person has to be more prepared and more gifted than the number one seat.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Your giftings may be different, but you're in the number two seat. My Pentecostal friends, particularly my Kojic friends, would appreciate this, to sanctify the leader in the eyes of the people. That's adjutancy 101, but let's put it in terms of the staff pastor. The number two role is to make the number one role easy.
Right.
And so you have to see things before they see it. You have to be more creative, or just as creative or energetic. You can't be as tired as the number one, because your job is to make. And I think the challenge, bro, is that in this generation, we see single celebrities. So you have a Chris Brown, you have a Rihanna, you have Nicki Minaj, you have Meg. But in the 90s, you had Scottie Pippen and Jordan.
Wow.
We grew up in the Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, that's big, King.
You know what I'm saying? So I think when you look at it in that perspective, I'm a sports fan, but I don't know a lot about sports, right? But I do know that on any football team, on any basketball team, there's always a star player. But when the team gets a ring, everybody on the team gets one.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think has caused that shift? I mean, as you mentioned, Jordan, Scottie Pippen, at one time, Shaq and Penny, Kobe and Penny. What do you think has caused that shift away from that model, or now that it's coming back around where you're seeing a lot more young preachers, getting staff positions? Where did you think the shift occurred?
I think the shift occurred, whether it was organically or forced, so I think egos have to be checked on both parts. The number one, we're preachers.
Yeah.
I think we either have a David and Saul model, or you have an Elisha model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk
Saul,
a little bit about that.
Why are you mad at me? Because I'm skilled to fight when you still the king. What we're mad about? I tell people, if you were on staff, I'm just gonna say at New Birth, right? Claude, if you preach and 100 people join the church, guess who they pastor?
Dr. Brian.
So why would he be upset about you doing what you do? And you want somebody in that spot that's gonna do what they're gonna do.
That's true.
But we have to, those who are in the second seat, have to sit in the second seat knowing that the first seat may not ever be yours.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Your name is on the little door in the big church. And I gotta be honest, when I was talking, this is full transparency. When Pastor Sloan and I met and we talked about vision and timing and all of that, I can answer that with no problem. The one thing I struggle with is what would it look like with me not getting that mic every Sunday? Because I'm a preacher.
Right. And you were used to preaching every week.
Yeah. What is one thing that preach because you're on vacation or you just saying, I want a break, is another thing when your name ain't on that schedule. But
this is true.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good season, man.
Man, those are big nuggets, man. So, as you kind of already shared your view, let's shift into talking about the importance of the second chair leader to the life of the church, and why is the second chair leader so important and vital?
So my dissertation was on Black clergy wholeness and self-care. And I don't care what size church a pastor pastors, he or she will experience a season of burnout. Whether they ever name it or not, they will experience burnout. It is important for the number two to be able to just relieve the pressure, to be the guard dog, to be the person that stands between the pastor and people, whether you're encouraging the man or woman of God, or whether you're keeping fires and putting fires out that they may not ever know about. It is keenly important. Even now, Claude, think about a few years ago when that pilot, the man who was having problems at home, got on the plane and he crashed the plane with those 200 people up there. Wow. The FAA changed the rules that now any plane you get on is 2 pilots. So that if one of them pass out behind the wheel or start acting crazy, the other one can take control. And I think that's important because we've seen too many leaders crash and burn and they don't have anybody that can help them, whether they didn't let anybody or they didn't have anybody. And number 2 positions are vitally important.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And again, I want to reiterate that every young preacher will not become a senior pastor, but these roles of staff pastors give the young preacher a space to be able to grow and develop. Man, as you've kind of already shared a little bit about the relationship and the importance of the senior pastor and the second chair, man, give us some nuggets on the importance of the relationship between the senior pastor and the second chair leader.
I believe that the single most relationship that is needed in a church is between the first and second chair. Not style, not becoming somebody that you're not, but for the pastor to be able to trust that whatever they release you to do, you're not trying to undermine them. And when the people hear you, they know that even if it sounds different, it is matching what the senior pastor would say. So I tell people at the Luke all the time, I love y'all, I appreciate y'all, but I work at the pleasure of Timothy W. Sloan. And if there's ever a time I got to choose between making you mad, and of course we know we work for God, but I work at the discretion of the senior pastor. And you got to be able to be trusted And you have to almost know the senior pastor better than he or she knows themselves. You got to almost anticipate what they're going to do. What would they like? Because it's not you're a spiritual armor bearer, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So if the pastor is on a series on grace, why am I talking about giving? If for the last 3 weeks he's been teaching, it ain't my time to get up there and kill the house. I got to stay in that same vein. And it's hard, but relationships take time. And I think that is the single most, I think trust and honor is the single most relationship. I'll give you this. We talk about the text with Aaron and Ur when they held Moses' hands up and said, as long as his hands was up, the people won. Well, you know, Claude, anytime you hold somebody's hand up, you smell all their body odor. All that fumes that was coming off Moses. And they could never drop his hands because it was more important that the people won than what I was feeling personally.
Wow. So tell me this, man. What are some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges that come with the second chair leader and that second chair experience?
So some of the pitfalls are, let's say, if you're in a number 2 seat and you work for a pastor that may not be known amongst in preaching circles, right? Mm-hmm. But you're planning the preaching and you're inviting all of the other guests. Your pastor may get the invitations off your relationships that you may not get. Because we know pastors swap pulpits with senior pastors. I don't care how gifted you may be. You have to know that at the end of the day, regardless of how good of a Sunday you have, they're still the number 1 leader. Not being able to make decisions. Now, the difference between me and some people, and much like yourself, you sat in that number 1 seat. Right. So you're used to making your own decisions. Now, you got to remember, the buck don't stop with me. I gotta think like somebody else and get somebody else approval, and that can be hard when you are trusted with vision, but you're not the visionary. And then the other part, if you are a preacher of any kind, I think you have to be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves and with those who we work for. Hey, I know you're gonna be preaching all the time, but because I am a preacher, either I need to be able to be released to go preach, or I need preaching opportunities of some kind because you brought me here knowing that I'm gifted. So I'm going to ask that you not stifle my gift now that I'm here with you. Because if not, you will be frustrated.
Yeah. Like how can you know, and I try to make this practical. How can you have certain conversations as a second chair leader with the senior pastor? Or do you believe those conversations should be done at the beginning of the agreement or the relationship, or or should those conversations kind of be had as time progresses?
I think that's one thing we do wrong in the Black church. Bishop Ivy Hilliard has a quote, "In God we trust, all others check out thoroughly." You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. In Black church, we are so afraid that if I come to Pastor Claude and have this conversation, he might tell me, you know what, young preacher, don't worry about the opportunity. I'm going to go with somebody else. Well, it may not be for me. I think we should get, now there's some things that may come up later, right? But I'm talking about, how often do you think I'll be preaching? How often can I go out? Because let's just say I work for you and you say, oh man, well, I know you gifted, Walker, so, I ain't gonna hold you back. And I come to you and you like, oh man, you were gone 2 times last month. You gone again? Because you know how we know how to be petty.
Right.
Oh man, you going out more. You going out more than the pastor. But you told me we were gonna figure it out later. I think it is vitally important to get that stuff, not always in black and white. Well, yes, in black and white, but if not, it needs to be discussed so that nobody is caught off guard.
I think that's fair. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Man, as we're preparing to close, man, what books would you recommend as it relates to leading from the second chair? And then my final question will be, what advice would you give to a young preacher that, may not pastor, as a senior pastor, but will be prepared as a staff pastor? What advice would you give to them that's functioning in either of those roles?
Man, one, there is a book called Leading from the Second Chair. I think everybody should get that book. There's a title of the book, Leading from the Second Chair. Dr. Sam Chan has a book entitled Who's Holding Your Ladder? It talks about pastors choosing their leaders, but I think it's also important for the second chair to read the book so that they can understand what the pastor is looking for. Some advice I would say, don't hang around other staff pastors that are disgruntled with their pastor, because you will walk around with a chip on your shoulder for your colleagues. That's not your reality. And don't be afraid to have conversations. I'm an 80s baby raised in the 90s. There's a scene in Lean on Me when Mr. Clark and the superintendent are having that argument, and he says, "You think you run stuff?" And he says, "I do." And he says, "No, contrary to popular belief, I'm the HNIC around here." And they have this spat, and the man walks off, and he says, "Now come on, let's get something to eat." When you are called to a pastor, and when a pastor is called to you, personality clashes happen, but our purpose is bigger than personality.
That's big.
And so I think if I would say anything, pray for your leader. Pray that God will cover you as you serve your leader. And I think the word is true. If you give a prophet a glass of water in the proper way, God will make sure that as a staff pastor, and let me just say this, being a number one is a facade. I can say that now on the other side, right? Like, I mean, it's good if you're called to it, but I think we need to see more team models.
I agree.
In the kingdom. If God has called you to a number one spot, hey, do it. People ask me all the time, "Well, I pastor again." Absolutely. I didn't leave my church because I was done with pastor. I really felt like God was calling me to this moment, and the way it worked, it was God. But I look forward to serving the church again, but I am enjoying being the number two.
Man, that's big, man. We wish you all God's best, man. And thank you for your wisdom, man. Thank you for your sharing as God is leading you. Man, you continue to do a marvelous job. Thank you, Dr. Walker.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Keep doing the work, man. Great conversation.
Man, thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Jeff Kennedy once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." All that is simply translated into is, I want to be here to help you grow. I want to grow with you. I want to be your partner as you're going through this process of the pathway. It's a journey. It's an experience, and we can grow together. Let's connect. Let's connect on social media. You can find me on platforms such as Facebook and Instagram at CDC2 Speaks. At CDC2 Speaks. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories. I want to laugh with you. I want to experience life with you. I want to grow with you as a young preacher. Let's grow together. I believe as we grow together, God has something amazing in store.
You have been watching Pathway to the Pulpit, hosted by Claude Douglas Cheatham Jr. of Edward Waters University. The program is designed to guide young clergy and HBU students to understand their divine assignment and maneuvering their pathway to destiny. For more information, you contact Claude Douglas Cheatham Jr. Edward Waters University, 1658 Kings Road, Jacksonville, Florida, 32209.
Dreaming about having your own podcast? Want to share your thoughts and ideas with the world but don't know how to do it? Maybe you're excited and committed, but don't have a good space to record. Would you like a professional environment to produce all of your podcasts? Well, we have the latest technology from 4K to HD and various set layouts from green screen rooms to live studios. The Inspire Network is an actual television station where our studios are available for rent, and we offer editing suites with the latest technology. We have a makeup studio and beautiful spaces to prepare for your show. Don't forget to ask about our convenient photography studio to capture professional headshots or redefine your new look. Our state-of-the-art facility is intentionally laid out to accommodate your multimedia needs.
If you're watching us today and you're not watching us on the Amazon Fire Stick, go to the app section and add us as an app today. Your financial support keeps the ministry alive. You can be a blessing by sowing via Cash App today at $TeachJax, or you can text to give at 833-481-1524 and text the word give. You're watching the Inspired Network, and maybe you're watching us on social media. Immediately go to your Roku device, press Add Channel, and download us today. Have a praise report or a testimony of how any of the programming at the Inspired Network has been a blessing to you? Please go to www.myprayerrequest.info. Click on the tab Testimony and submit it today. The IPC prayer team would love